Hi, everybody. Welcome to Conejo Valley Visionaries, a new podcast spotlighting the people and stories behind some of your favorite Conejo Valley small businesses. I'm your host, Christina Denstead. In today's episode, you'll hear from Amy Bates, co-owner of West Tasting Room in Thousand Oaks. Amy's first career was in the film industry, where she project managed feature films around the world. After a decade of working on movies, she realized that she was burned out and knew it was time to pursue one of her other passions, wine. In our conversation, Amy talks about how she pursued a wine certification, when her idea for West came to be, and how she put the business plan on hold for 6 years before finally opening West in 2021. Amy is open and candid about the challenges there are when running a small business and how the incredible community she and her co-owner, Rachel, have built at West keeps West moving forward. With that, I hope you enjoy my conversation with Amy. Hey, Amy, thanks so much for being here.
Hi, how are you, Christina? Thank you for having me.
I'm great, and I am so thrilled to finally be able to speak to you. We've been, working on scheduling this for a while, and I am absolutely thrilled because West Tasting Room is one of my favorite spots in the Conejo Valley, and my go-to location to find incredible wines. And your pizzas and your charcuterie boards are just, I think, one of the best in the area. And so I am absolutely thrilled to hear your story and how West came to be. So thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me to do this. Thank you for being a wine club member.
Of course, the only wine club I belong to, or have belonged to before. So thank you for putting that together. Well, let's get started. Okay, what we like to do here is go back to early days for Amy. What did you want to be when you grew up?
Oh, okay. I don't know. I never thought that I would own a wine business.
Okay.
But I actually went to college for film.
Oh,
so I loved feature films. I kind of grew up in love with movies, and that's actually what I ended up studying. I'm from the East Coast. I lived in Baltimore. I went to Towson University, and I studied film there. And when I graduated, I had a degree in film and communications and English, and I moved to New York for a few years to work in film production and television production. I did that for many years, and then that took me to Los Angeles, out here in California. And that was really my study and my career for 15 plus years. Okay. I don't really want to do math and age on this podcast. For 15 so years, that's really what I did. And I moved from production to feature film, and I worked on movies, and I worked with an actor, and that's how I met my husband, was on a film set. So that was really my career for a long time. That's what I studied. That's what I love to do. And then, it's a very difficult business with a lot of burnout. It's very hard. I was traveling a lot. I had done 5 feature films on location in about 2.5 years.
Wow.
So
oh my goodness. And that around the US or globally?
Yeah, both. So I would be in New Orleans on set, prepping to go straight to London. And in London, I'm prepping to go straight to New York. At the time I was single, wasn't married, didn't have a family. So that lifestyle worked. Wow. But, it's also it's fun, exciting, but it's also grueling. And I think I had sort of, hit my limit of doing this for so many years, different versions of production for so many years. And then I decided, I was ready for something new. But that was the only thing that I had studied and knew how to do. It's a very specific skill set.
What part of production were you involved with?
I was a production manager. Okay. And then I also worked with an actor, and I helped him run his company. So a well-known actor, and he's fantastic. And we traveled together and worked on set, and I was sort of his right hand. So we were picking projects, we were doing script notes, we were just working side by side on everything that needed to get done. And so then I decided to leave. And it's a funny story. I like to tell this story because I feel like it's the best transition from why I left production to wine. Is we were on set and we were in London, and my boss said to me, I feel like you're getting to the point where you just want to hear the word wrap so you can go get your glass of wine. And he actually saw that in me. Like, he saw that I was getting a little burned out. He saw I was getting a little tired. And I'd be on set. I'd be on a 14, 15-hour day. And I'm like, come on, man, let's wrap this up. Like, I'm in London. I got a good restaurant waiting. I got a glass of wine I want to get to. And so he really did see that in me. And so when I left, because I only sort of know how to work and do things that I'm passionate about, I decided to study wine, and I left the industry completely, went and got my wine certification, and then started working in the wine industry.
Oh my goodness, that is incredible. I love that. It's funny when you have a passion and that other people can see in you that maybe you didn't see in yourself. Or at that point, did you know that intuitively that you wanted to maybe work in that industry, or was it really him kind of noticing it?
No, I definitely didn't know. I would say like I've always grown up in restaurants and hospitality. So my first job was 15 busing tables. And now I own my own business and I still bus tables.
Yeah. Oh, funny
real full circle moment. But my first job was busing tables. I put myself through college. That's how I put myself through college. I know everyone always has part-time jobs. Some people babysit, some people work retail. I always worked in restaurants. So I was always a waitress from 15 to 21 to when I graduated college. So I did all of it. I did cater waiting. I worked in pubs, Irish pubs. I did fine dining. Like I always worked the floor. I always worked in restaurants, always thinking like, oh, that's just to get me through school to go do the thing, which it did. And then I went and did the thing. And so when I was working in film, I think we traveled so much that I really fell in love with food and wine. It's pretty special. You're living in New Orleans for 3 months. You're living in London for 2 months. You're living in New York for 2 months. You're there and you can, just kind of eat and drink your way through these amazing restaurants in the city. And so that really had become a hobby / passion of mine. And so when I knew I wanted to leave film and didn't know where else to go, I also know that I can't really devote all of my work hours to something that I'm not passionate about. So that seemed kind of like an obvious direction. But I was also starting from the bottom up. I had a hospitality experience, but I really loved wine, but didn't know wine, didn't have an education in wine. And so that's where I started, was going to get my wine certification.
So were you always working front of house in your previous restaurant jobs? Okay.
Yeah. I did a little back of house, expo. That was kind of my favorite. If anyone's ever waited tables or worked in a restaurant, that person on the line that's like calling all the tickets and it's like crazy and it's hectic. I really kind of thrived in that. I love that. But generally, yes, I always worked front of house.
Okay. And it is an incredible, going back to like being able to travel around for your career, but also experiencing restaurants and that lifestyle. I can imagine that really like fueling it too. Places like London or New Orleans, like some of the, culinary capitals, what an awesome opportunity to go and do that. Are you still able to do that now?
Travel around?
Yeah.
No, I own a business. I go home and I go to work and then I come back home. Yeah. We are traveling this summer for the first time. This will be in July. We'll be open for 3 years, the wine shop, the tasting room. And so I am taking a couple weeks off this summer, really for the first time. I think that I'm able to do that, but not since we opened it. Yeah.
And so you went to get your wine certification. Was that something, were you living in the Conejo Valley at that point, or were you in Los Angeles?
I was still in Los Angeles.
Okay. And was there a local program that you took, or how did you discover or find like the right route to go?
Yeah. So I actually got my certification through like Napa Valley Wine Academy. So they are online generally. They have a great program. There's a number of different programs for people looking to get their wine education. You can go through the Court of Sommeliers. You can become a certified sommelier. You can get your WSET, which is your Wine and Spirits Education Trust. You can be a certified specialist of wine. So there's a number of different programs. Okay. All of them they do the similar things. They also do different things. They lend themselves to, basic all the way to advanced wine education. Some things focus on more than others. Court of Sommelier really wants you to have that hospitality floor experience one-on-one. Some are a little bit more on the sales or the business side. But generally, no matter what program you're going down, you're getting, a very, beginner all the way to advanced education. Mm-hmm. So I went through the WSET program at that point, just to be able to start with my education. I skipped level 1, just went right to level 2, just to have the basics, to sort of be able to get my foot in the door for wine. And then I started looking for wine jobs. But, these programs, a lot of them, the one I personally took, you register online.
Mm-hmm.
You get a book, you get a test booklet, and you study on your own for X amount of months. And then you can go take the test for 2 days. You sort of do a 2-day seminar where you're tasting, just kind of like leaning into all of those things that you've studied on your own. You have a teacher, and they kind of go through it for 2 days, and then you take your exam. And there's a number of different ways to do that. I know the Wine House in Santa Monica, a lot of my employees have gone through them. They have amazing programs. They have Spanish Wine Scholar, French Wine Scholar,
wow.
All of the W sets. So you can go through them as well. And sometimes those are, every Sunday for 5 or 6 weeks. So there's a number of different programs. There's a number of different ways to do those programs. They all sort of lean towards the same thing. And it's really just having some basic knowledge to be able to understand wine and winemaking. And yeah.
Well, in my mind, I'm envisioning it to be very glamorous. Like you're drinking a lot of wine and, really being able to, just immerse yourself.
Yeah.
Was that what it was? Or there's a lot of technicality too?
For the testing process or the certification?
Yeah, the certification when you're sitting.
I think the wine tasting is the end component. So to give you an example, so I've got this dense book, that I'm studying on my own. My husband and my kid are like going out on a Saturday so I can make flashcards for myself, for 6 hours of like what wine does what in what region, winemaking processes 101. So it is a lot of studying. So you're not actually a lot of times during that process drinking. And then for the last 2 days where I go to take my test and you have a group with you and you have a professor leading it, we tasted, I think, like 30 wines each day, So then we're like, okay, now we're tasting, now we're comparing the wines, now we're understanding them, now we're understanding how to describe them. We're talking about structure. We're talking about all those basics in the last 2 days.
Okay.
But, in some programs when you're going for your SOM, you're going for your level 3, you're going for your level 4, that is a lot of times a lot of tastings. A lot of times you'll have a tasting group really so you can understand the wine. You can really dial into color, structure, notes, palettes, how to identify wine, how to understand wine. So when you get in those more advanced classes, it is a lot more drinking. But, I could still drink on the side as much as I wanted and practice on my own. But yeah.
Totally fair. When you were making this transition from film into getting your wine certification, did you have a vision for what you thought you would want to do with that education?
It's funny. I took a shout out here to Ian Blackburn, who does learnwine.com here in Los Angeles. We can double check that that's the exact website. Forgive me if it's not. But he runs a lot of wine programs. He does like Stars of Pinot. He has a lot of wine events. He does wine classes. And when I knew I wanted to get into wine, I sort of found him and went to one of his classes that was literally like a work in wine 101, which was really helpful. That said, look, here are the paths you can go down if you want to work in wine, right? You can work in a restaurant and be a som, front of house. You can work retail. You can work on the sales side and sell wine to retail shops and restaurants. You can do wine marketing. Like he really broke it down for the 5 or 6 paths that you can go down, which really helped me narrow down what I thought I wanted to do. And I felt like it was either going to be front of house or sales. So then I just sort of started looking for front of house jobs, and I got a job at a little marketplace that was in Hollywood. And kind of like starting from the bottom up again. Like I was working in film and traveling the world, and then you go get a front of house job and they're like, hey, this is what I can pay you. And you're like, okay, this is what I want to do. I'm going to start from scratch again. And they're not there anymore, this marketplace, but I worked there for a year or so, just buying wine for them, understanding wine, working with sales reps, getting a little bit more experience. And then I actually left and moved to the sales side. I found a winery that was looking for a representative here in Los Angeles, family owned from New Zealand. Mm-hmm. And I started knocking on doors and wine shops and restaurants and selling their wine for them. So I kind of went from the front of house buying position to the sales position of representing this lovely family from New Zealand and promoting their wines throughout Los Angeles.
So you ended up like of those paths that you learned about, you ended up doing the 2 that you were most interested in.
Right. Yeah.
And then how did then that transition into West? When did the idea for West Tasting Room sort of formulate?
Right. So, when I started doing sales, I was knocking down doors and, trying to get this wine in wine shops and, wine restaurants, wine bars. Sales is, for just to explain a little bit how it works and like how we buy wine, if you're a retail shop or you're a wine bar, you can't buy directly from the winery. Most of the time, you have to go through a distributor, a sales distributor, sort of this third party. So that's exactly what I did for sales. We had our own distribution license. So I'm calling up, every wine bar I see, every restaurant I see, every wine store I see. I'm calling them, I'm knocking on the door. I've got some beautiful New Zealand Sauv Blancs. I've got a sparkling Sauv Blanc. I've got a Pinot Gris, a Riesling. You're pouring them, you're tasting them, you're trying to make that sale in a wine shop or in a restaurant, or get a placement so that your Sauv Blanc is being now poured by the glass. And once I did that here for Los Angeles, we were having success with that. So they promoted me to national sales manager. So at that point, I sort of removed myself a little bit from Los Angeles, hired people to run the Los Angeles market. And then I started traveling across the country because they were only in like 6 or 7 states. So now I'm knocking on state stores instead of, retail shop doors. And, I'm trying to open us up in, Colorado or North Carolina or Florida. And I'm traveling again, this time for wine. And, working with local distributors there, working the market there, going to wine shops there, going to restaurants there. And that was it was really fun for me. I get to travel. I get to talk about the wine. I get to pour wine. I get to see people enjoying wine. And then at the same time, I'm going into all these little wine bars going, oh, that's so cute. Like, oh, that's great. Like, oh, I would do that. Or I wouldn't do that. Or like, why aren't they doing this? Or like, oh, this place is, this is how I would fix this and this. And only if they could do this. And so the wheels are turning, for a good year and a half.
Into out there. It's incredible.
And I think it was also inspiring for me. I would go to these wine bars. I remember one specifically that I went to in Cleveland. And it was this young, super smart, badass woman, and she's like, I don't know how I did this, but I opened this and my husband and I did it. And it was a gorgeous little spot. And she was pouring amazing wines. And I was like, she did it, and it's like, you always want to see that someone can do something that you think might be far out of reach. And so that was after I saw that a couple of times, I was like, maybe I can do this. And I actually did a business plan. My son was a year old at that time.
Ask that. Okay. So, and when you're traveling around as a national business manager, did you have children then, or was this?
I did. I had a baby. I had gone back to work. So I think he was about 1 when I was going through all this. I had just gotten back to work. He was like 1.5, one son. And so, I put together a business plan. I thought like, maybe we could do this at some point, sometime. I spent all this time and effort. I did a 5-year plan, projections, all these things. My husband and I were like dreaming. We were driving around Los Angeles. We were looking at spaces. We were like, we didn't know how we were going to finance any of this or actually do it, of course. And then after I spent a lot of time with it, I looked at it and I had a conversation with my husband and I said, you know what? Like, I'm not going to do it. Like, my son's not even 2. This is our only one. I feel like I know what this is going to take to open this business. And like, I don't want to do that right now. Like, I really want to be present as a mom. And my husband was like, really? I think we can do it. And I was like, I just knew how much work it was going to be. I knew it was going to take everything in me. And I wanted to take that and put it in being a mom at that time, because it's such special years that you don't get back. So I put it on hold. And this is a true story. I had used one of these like online business, create your business plan platforms.
Okay. I was curious.
And, you pay whatever they make you pay every month. You pay, $20 a month to be able to use the software, and they keep it all there for you. And so I put it on pause, because if I canceled it, then I would lose all my information. So I put this plan on pause for $2.99 for 6 years.
Wow.
6 years, I paid $3 to just keep it here in the background, being like, maybe one day, I remember my husband would be like, what is this on our statement for $2.99?
Yeah, but your intuition, you knew.
We're keeping the dream for $3 a month. I think that's fair.
The fire is burning.
I think $3 a month is okay to keep a dream.
Yeah.
And then as I was working for the national sales manager for this winery, COVID struck. And so like everyone else and like people that were getting furloughed, literally my job was to travel in an airplane and to sell wine to restaurants. And then they shut down travel, and then restaurants weren't open. So I literally had no job anymore. And so they furloughed me. And so I had a lot of free time on my hands. And so I went back to that $2.99 and upgraded back to the $19.99 and started playing with the business plan. And then we decided I've got 6 months here. I'm not working. I'm stuck at home. And we just kept playing with it, and we just kept getting into it. We kept talking about it. And then I very strangely thought, oh, COVID is a perfect time to open a food and beverage. It wasn't a good time when my son was 2, but now that all the restaurants are, struggling and nobody's going out to eat and nobody's drinking and no one's communicating, this is clearly a perfect time. But that's pretty much what happened. That's when we revisited and decided that we were going to do it.
Amazing. And look at you now celebrating 3 years in a couple of months. So it can happen. I want to go back to one thing that you mentioned, like that you knew that you could only do something that you felt passionate about. And you seem very self-aware in a lot of ways. How did you know that? Because I think a lot of people don't know that about themselves, that, your energy is best spent on something that you're passionate about.
I just think, putting myself through school and paying for your own school, I was always working 1 job, 2 jobs. I had a major, I had a minor, I was always working. So from the time you wake up to the time you go to bed, you're just putting your efforts and your energy into something. And at that time it was school. And I think that's when I realized, okay, if this is what it takes to have a job and you're putting this much time into something and this much energy into something and you're doing it 40 hours a week, 50 hours a week, that's such a large percentage of your life. Like I really wanted to be something that I love. I really want to enjoy it, which is why I went into film. And film was very difficult. It was challenging. It was hard. There were a lot of obstacles, but I really did love it. Not every day, but generally I really, really did love it. And so I think when I was going to school, realizing how hard it was to put myself through college, I realized, okay, so this better be worth it. I better enjoy it. I don't, for that. So maybe that's where it came from.
Okay. No, I think it's helpful because I love the idea of what you wanted to be as a kid, and then what, you kind of end up where you're at now in your life. And I think that a lot of times people are doing things just because they've been told it's the right thing to do versus like what they actually feel really passionate about. And it's great that you knew that at your core in terms of transitioning into wine too, that you knew that would be something, no matter what it turned out to be, would be amazing. And then, having to go through the challenges of the pandemic to then realize, no, it's back to that dream of opening a wine shop.
Yeah. And it truly is my second career. You hear people talk about that. When your second career, I think I was, I'm not going to say my age, but on the other side of 40 when I opened I opened West Tasting Room. So, and I had spent, 15 to 18 years already having a whole other career. And now I own this, really lovely, beautiful business. So you really can have a second career. You really can at any time go, you know what, like this isn't working for me. Like this isn't what I want in my life. Like it's too stressful. It's too much time away. I'm not enjoying it every day. And especially for film, for me, it's a very specific skill set, being a production manager, or you're an editor, or you're a director of photography. That doesn't translate very well to making a sharp right turn to something else where maybe other jobs or careers do. So I really did have to start back from the bottom, and that's okay. Like that's okay for people to do that you can completely make a sharp right turn and still bounce back from it.
Do you think there are skills from being a production manager that you're using in West now?
100% every single day. I actually was just having this conversation with a guest last night who comes in regularly, who's become a friend that also works in film and TV production. And he was like, oh, that's why you can run a business. I forgot you were a production manager. Yeah, because running a set and you have to do, I think owning a small business is very similar to production in that regard, where you have to be able to see the big picture of everything. Like, how are we going to put this together? Like, where are we going to finance it? How are we going to get the money? Like, how are we going to staff up? Like, what is it going to look like? How are we going to redecorate? How are we going to run the kitchen? You have to look at all those big things. We're running a movie. Like, where's transportation going to park? Where's hair and wardrobe going to set up? Like, who's the crew? Who's the cast? We're doing all that. And then in the same sense, you have to know every single detail, right? You're putting out the call sheet for the next day. Like, you better not get somebody's phone number wrong. You better make sure you've helped order the right filter for the camera. And same with this, like, I own a business, but like I'm running around yesterday picking up basil. We're out of basil, and then I've got to do cash flow projections for the next 12 months. So
and you're talking to guests at the shop. So, right.
Yeah, so it definitely 100% translates. I don't know if I would actually be able to do this in the same manner, or, I want to say, like, sometimes I'm successful day to day. Sometimes I'm like, I'm drowning, I'm failing, but, I'm not doing a good job. But I definitely think it's the skill set that was absolutely required to do this.
And why did you decide to open West Tasting Room in Thousand Oaks?
It's a great question. So my husband and I actually still live in Los Angeles County. We live over in West Hills near Calabasas area. And so obviously we sort of started looking for things around here. And, we just really weren't finding the right spot. We looked at 2 spots. We almost went down the road on 2 different spots. One was in Woodland Hills and one was in Calabasas. It just didn't feel, I don't know exactly what I wanted. And so we just kept looking around. We had an agent helping us, and the agent contacted us and said, "Oh, we have this interesting property in Thousand Oaks." And this is a true story. I was like, Thousand Oaks? Do I know Thousand Oaks? I'm like, I think it's by Westlake Village. I mean, it's so crazy for me to think about that now, but we are in LA County and we're at the very ends of LA County. And we used to live in Laurel Canyon. We used to live on Melrose. So it's like, we usually go the opposite direction whenever we're doing anything. We're headed that way, or we go up to Santa Barbara and sort of skip through the towns between here and Santa Barbara. So I was like, I don't really know how much I know about Thousand Oaks. That seems kind of far. And she was like, it's not that far from you. It's like 15 minutes, And so then we came out and we looked at the space and we redid the space. So it was definitely different when we first looked at it. But, it's just like very lovely little, strip center that only has 4 or 5 things. And we're driving down Teal Boulevard, and Masters is right there. The Gardens of the World is right there. The Lakes is right there. The Civic Center. And I'm like, oh, Thousand Oaks is nice, And then we did our due diligence and we kind of dug into the area research wise and, driving around. And, we were really surprised that we decided to do it in Thousand Oaks, but it just checked a lot of the boxes. It was right there by the Civic Center. It was right on Teal Boulevard. The community seemed lovely. The area seemed lovely. And it seemed to work for us. So we were as surprised. And that was really my first experience coming into Conejo Valley in the Thousand Oaks area. Mm-hmm. And I'm so glad we did.
I was going to ask that. Are you happy with the community and the place that you've built here?
So much. I mean, it's, running a small business is really difficult. And my partner, Lindsay, who runs the business with me and is with my co-owner, who I know that and you've met, and she's our wine director. I think we both work so hard. We're both moms. We wake up from the time we wake up and we get our kids to school, and then we're right at our laptop and it just goes.
You've already lived a million lives by the time work starts, right? That's why I was so surprised with kids.
Yeah,
do people realize what
by the time you're in school, you're like, okay, I'm exhausted. Now I'm going to still work. So we work from the time that we wake up really truly to the time that we go to bed, and it's nonstop. And I think what reminds us of why we do this is the community that we've built and the team that we've built with our staff. So the Thousand Oaks community and Westlake included in that, and the people in Conejo Valley, and that includes people that we have members from Simi Valley, we have members from Moore Park, we have members from Camarillo, all the way down to Calabasas over in LA. But they have been so welcoming and so lovely. And I was just really shocked by it. And people always ask me, like, what's the one thing that surprises you the most about opening this business? And that's my answer is I thought we'd have regulars. Like, hopefully if we're doing our job right, we have regulars, like, oh yeah, they come in a lot. I didn't know we would know half of their names. I didn't know we would know when their daughters were getting married. I didn't know we'd be doing their engagement parties, their 60th birthday parties, their, book release parties. Like, I didn't know we'd know their names. And on any given Friday night, when we're packed in there, all of our staff, myself, my managers, we can walk around and say, oh, hi, Kathy. Hi, Brian. Hi, Roland. Hi, Kyle. Like, we know these guys. Hi, Megan. We know everyone's name.
That surprises me too, because I will say the sense that you get when you go into West is that, like, that was the goal, because you guys are all truly some of the friendliest people I've ever met and so welcoming. And it really feels like that was almost like the primary intention, was creating this feeling of a place for people to go and feel welcome and know everybody and just like kind of like welcome you in. There's no airs about the space, even though you're serving incredible wine. It really feels like that, was maybe subconsciously a part of it, was creating that space for people.
Well, thank you so much for saying that. That really means a lot. And that's really what brightens our day. And I did always say that I didn't want to open a wine bar. I wanted to create a wine community, which is why we also do wine classes, when we have the availability to do the education aspect of it. We have winemaker events almost every month we've got winemakers coming in from Paso, from Santa Barbara. We've got a winemaker coming down from Washington soon. So we do these winemaker events, so our guests have access to that. We do classes. We share bottles. Like it's a joy when we have regulars come in that go, you know what, I have something really great in my cellar, and you guys are the ones I want to share it with. And they come in and they open a bottle and they're sharing it with us because they know we appreciate it and we can talk about it. But I never wanted to create kind of a pour and go wine bar. Here you go, there's your glass. So, our staff, almost everyone is certified with their wine credentials, whether it's Port of Somme, whether it's the W set. We're wine geeks. We like to educate. We like to talk about it. And we like to talk with our guests, and we like to know everyone's name. And it's not everyone, but, it's hard to be cranky when you're drinking great wine. So most of the time, the guests that are coming in, they're in a good mood. They want to talk about wine. We want to talk about it with them. We get to know their names. We get to know what they do, their families. I have regular guests, this is a true story, that come in every week that we love, that we adore. Couple, they've become friends. Yesterday, I was behind the bar and the gentleman said to me, your fan in the bathroom is making a really loud noise. Can I come in and replace it for you tomorrow? Oh, let me go see if I can fix it now. And he did. Yeah. And that happens all the time. Like I'll be closing up and I'm like cleaning up tables, and some of our guests get up and they're like, oh, let me help you. They're
going to bust for you.
I'm like, no, this is my job. Like, you sit down. So, our members, our regulars, our guests from Conejo Valley, again, like all the way from Moore Park, Simi, Thousand Oaks, Westlake, they're such lovely, amazing people. They've been so supportive. Your guests and your regulars and your wine club members, they help you keep the lights on in those first few years by showing up every week, by, hosting their special occasions there, by talking word of mouth. And, I really think that's why we've been able to be so successful in these first few weeks. Is it does really feel like we're building a community, and that's the best part of all of it.
Great. No, and I can tell you as a guest, it feels that way as well.
Yeah.
When did food come into play? Did you always know you wanted to have a full kitchen when you opened 3 years ago?
Yeah, so we actually don't even have a full kitchen, which would probably surprise most people. Like, we don't have an oven, we don't have a stove, we don't have any of that. The space that I took on didn't really allow for that. And so I knew that was okay. Like, we would probably be doing charcuterie boards. And at some point I was like, maybe we'll have to figure out how to do more. From a restaurant point of view, from a business owner point of view, food's been really, really difficult because we don't have a full kitchen. And I'm always trying to figure out what is the menu that is satisfying, that's enjoyable, that's elevated, simple but great ingredients. But we don't have a stove. We don't have an oven. We can't cook. So when we first opened, we just opened with charcuterie boards. We had like 4 or 5 different charcuterie boards, with little bruschettas, and, we kept it really simple. And again, like we've never before, right now, sort of, we've never had a chef. Our tasting room associates would pour wine and then go in the back and make a cheese board. And sort of that's always how it was. It didn't really warrant a full chef because we didn't have a full kitchen. And I think that was a great way to start while people were trying to find us and get to know us. And then we would find, like, from a business point of view, like, people come in, they get some glass of wine, they get some charcuterie. And then by 6:30 on a Saturday night, it was empty. They're like, we're off to dinner. And we're like,
oh, it's real
okay.
food.
We're like, you should stay. We're open till 9. You should have more wine. But it's like, just have cheese boards. This is great. Lovely. We're off to dinner. And we're like, okay, so now it's time. Yeah. So we opened the first 6 months just with charcuterie boards. And then I knew the next step was probably a pizza oven. So we invested in a really, lovely pizza oven that I think makes amazing pizzas. And that's pretty much what we have back there in our kitchen. My husband and I came up with all the pizza recipes, and we still work together on recipes. We have someone working with us now that's helping us consult. That's going to help us maybe, add a few things to the menu, but it's still going to be, really cold salads, interesting charcuterie boards, dips, spreads, and then we can expand our pizzas. But yeah, so I think it's really difficult to work in wine and have a wine bar and not allow people to have something that feels like a substantial meal. I mean, it's always great. It goes with cheese, it goes with charcuterie, but it instantly changed our business. And just for me, I think, I've eaten in amazing restaurants and had amazing tasting menus or gorgeous steaks, but sometimes at the end of the day, like an amazing pizza, a salad, and a great glass of wine, it's just as good as anything else,
Well, that's sort of like my go-to meal.
And so now now it's like, now everyone stays till close. Now we're like, okay, we're close, and we're still, packed at the end of the night. So now people stay and we've got enough food to really like sit and enjoy and have a meal.
That's so smart that you saw this, I don't know, problem or challenge of like that gap between the last hours and then figured the solution, and it's actually fulfilling the need of what people were actually looking for.
Yeah.
What would you say has been the biggest challenge that you've had to experience?
Let's see, we own a small business, so there's a long list. Honestly, honestly, I think for any small business where it's, family owned or it's partner owned, that doesn't come with like a lot of investment backing, I think it's money. I really do. I mean, you can work as hard as you want. You can put everything in it. You can have great strategies. You can, have great ideas. But at the end of the day, everything you do, you sort of need money for any small business to be able to execute it. So I think that's really just been the challenge. And especially when you're working in food and business, it's seasonal, so it's busier than sometimes, it's busier at the holidays. It's slower in summer when people are on vacation. So you're always working on like seasonal versus, other small businesses that aren't affected by the seasons. I think that's why we see, unfortunately, so many food and beverage restaurants and industries going down. It's seasonal. And this is also an industry specifically for food and beverage that has very thin margins. That's, very well known. I mean, I think Los Angeles had like 63 restaurant closings last year, which is like one of the biggest ever. And you're seeing chefs that are like very well-known chefs shuttering their doors for a number of reasons. And, inflation has gone up, prices go up, the margins are smaller. And I think where it gets tough with food is that you can only charge a customer so much for a pizza,
Totally.
So much for a plate of pasta. And there's so many other expenses with owning a small business, specifically in this industry where, included in the cost of the pizza, you go to your favorite Italian restaurant, you're like, why am I spending $25 for a plate of pasta at that restaurant? It's, they're covering their rent, they're covering their business insurance, they're covering their mandated retirement, they're covering their workers' comp, they're covering their payroll, and then whatever's left is like what they have to run on for profit. And it's a really tough industry specifically for those reasons. And so I think that's the biggest challenge for, any small business to be able to have, that revenue coming in. But I think for food and beverage specifically, because you're throwing seasonality on top of that, I think that's the challenge for this particular industry most of the time.
I'm curious because obviously Thousand Oaks, Westlake, the Conejo Valley is a sort of contained area in a lot of ways. And there's not, in my opinion, a lot of other places like what you're doing in our neighborhoods. So do you feel like that works almost in the benefit? I mean, 63 closings, I think you said in LA, because it's a huge city, but is it better or worse in a smaller community? I don't know if that question makes sense, but I feel like there's maybe less competition, but then there's less people. Which was
no, I mean, I don't know that it works better or worse one way or the other. Obviously, it's exactly what you said, right? It's relative. So Los Angeles is a much larger market, but it's a much more saturated market. You can go into any area and you can find 10 wine bars, 10 wine shops. Whereas here it is less populated, but there's also less competition. But I think at the end of the day, even if the population is less, even if you're in a smaller area, if you're doing something that people want to show up for once a week, if you're doing something that people want to show up once a month and your customers are happy and they're coming back and you're rotating that constantly and consistently, then I think it all makes sense business-wise. I think it's all relative.
Okay. What are you most proud of?
Well, we did it. We opened the doors 3 years ago. We did it. I really do feel proud about a lot of things. But I think if I had to pick one, I would say the community that we've created. And I think also the staff that we have really with that community. We've created this great community. But I think I'm most proud of the people, I guess, that we attract to West, whether that's talent, whether that's staff, whether that's our guests coming in. I think we have a really beautiful energy there, not to sound like a hippie. It's zen and it's great energy. No, but I mean, we really, we love working with each other. I have this great, amazing team. My managers, I mean, there's so many people that have been there since we opened, almost 3 years ago. They're still with us.
I was going to say, I feel like most of the faces look exactly the same.
Yeah. We've become this, lovely family, and we work hard, and we're all invested, and we all care. And it's genuinely enjoyable to go into the tasting room and stand next to these women, these men that are pouring wine. We really enjoy each other's company. And I always make this joke to say, we're closed on Mondays. We have one day off. And most of the time the team is like, so where are we going to lunch? Where are we going to dinner? Are we going to go practice our wines and blind taste? And I'm always like, you guys know it's your day off, right? I'll give one of my, managers a Friday night off, and I come in and they're sitting at the bar. I'm like, this is your night off, right? So I think just the community we've created, and that's our team, and that's our staff, and that's, when we're stressful. And I always say, like, I'll be home in front of my computer and I'm doing things that are stressful. I'm doing permits or license or accounting or, all those unenjoyable business owner tasks. And then you come in and, you see your guests come in and they're so happy to be here, and they're giving us hugs, and they know all of our staff's names, and their smiles brighten up our day. And so I really think that's the thing that I feel at the end of the day, the most proud of, because you can open a business, you can run a business, you can pour wine, but having regular people come through the doors every day that you see that you're making happy consistently, like, I think that's probably the answer. Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, how would you describe West? Because how I understood it, it's West Coast wines. Is that right? How would you describe West?
Yeah. So originally I wanted to make wine a little bit more understandable for people that don't have a wine education background. And I think wine is very intimidating. So I think, everyone knows what a California cab is, or a Pinot from Santa Barbara area. But when they start looking at French wine labels, I think it gets tricky. I think it can be very intimidating. And I would always say, like, if you walk into a Total Wine and you don't have a wine education, like, that is a completely unuseful situation for you, right? Like, it'll say, oh, this section is, Rhone Valley. It's like, no one knows what that means. Like, most people don't know what that means. They don't know what wines are coming from there. They don't know what grapes. It's divided by regions. It's very confusing. French labels can be confusing to people. So I wanted to create something that was much easier to digest. And I thought, really West Coast wines between California, Oregon, and Washington, those 3 states put out 97% of the wine in this country. And California alone, you can get almost, so many varietals that usually aren't accessible. Most people, Cab, Pinot, Sauv Blanc, Chardonnay, but you can get Gruner, you can get Gewürztraminer, you can get Carignan, we do so many great different things here. Of course, they're not always the same as they would be in the country of origin, maybe that they come from. A California Riesling is going to be very different from a German Riesling or an Austrian, Riesling. Mm-hmm. But there's so much more here to explore that I think people don't really know. So between Washington, California, and Oregon, I just really thought, like, this is your backyard. Like, we can explain this to you. We can explain terroir. We can explain region to you. We can explain how that affects wine. You can kind of just get to really know wines really well up and down your backyard and your coast. So we really, really only focused on West Coast wines our first few years. And now we are bringing a little bit more global wines in and tying that into the education a little bit more, which has been a lot of fun, to give people more access to those and being able to explain them and educate people a little bit on those wines in those regions. But we're still probably, 70% West Coast wines and 30% global now.
With that, what do you see as the vision for West Tasting Room moving forward?
Oh my goodness, that's such a great question, because Lindsay, my partner, and I, we sit down and we have so many big ideas, and we have so many things that we would love to continue to do and expand the business. But it's, you spend so much time, managing the day to day that sometimes it's like we really want to get to a lot of these bigger ideas. But I think the main thing is just really expanding the community and expanding the products that we can offer to the community. So right now, because, we're still in year 3 and we're still, working our butts off every day to deliver the best wine experience we can and put the best products out. We'll do a winemaker event once a month. We'll maybe do a class, 2 to 3 times a year. But it would just be great to be able to overall expand the community, have regular classes that are taught, every weekend, and have regular events and have a private event space. And, we've gone to people's houses before and done at-home wine tastings. They have a birthday party and they invite 20 of their friends, and we come in and we do an at-home private tasting. These are all things that, we love to do, that we're really good at doing it, but we still have a tasting room that's open, 6 days a week from noon to 9 p.m. So we've got to run that. So I think the goal for us, for Lindsay and I right now is to be able to get to that next point where we can start expanding the products we offer and expanding the community. Because it's fun. Like every time someone does a class, they're like, when are you doing this again? And I'm like, sure. I don't know. We're very tired and we have many, many other events happening, and every time we do an event, they're like, this is great. Like, when's your next event? So it's just, we've got all those puzzle pieces there. It's just being able to sort of like lean into each of those directions and keep expanding.
Fantastic. I cannot wait to see what is next. 3 years, that's a huge milestone. So congratulations on coming up on the anniversary. I have 3 rapid fire questions for you, but I will start off actually with a question that came in through the Conejo Valley Visionaries Instagram. And I'm curious about your thoughts on this. It was, when or do you offer non-alcoholic wines? And what do you feel about that trend?
It's a great question. And I know Lindsay, who runs our wine program, has been on the hunt for quite a while for non-alcoholic wines. And we haven't found a lot that honestly we really, really love. There's a handful here and there, but that is totally on our agenda. We would love to be able to bring those in. We do have lower alcohol wines, a lot that we offer to people. I think our thing is anytime we buy a wine, whether it's no matter what it is, and especially if it was non-alcoholic, we just want it to be good. We never want to put something subpar out there. We never want to put something below average out there. So I know she's hunted a lot to try to help build out our non-alcoholic program. We have some non-alcoholic craft beers. Unfortunately, I feel like craft beer is a little bit ahead of the game. They can mask a little bit better, sort of those flavors. So we do have non-alcoholic options for people, but we really are trying to work on building out our non-alcoholic wine program. We got to find the right ones and good ones. Yeah.
Sounds good. Okay. So 3 rapid fire questions. Okay. First one is, what is your favorite wine?
Grenache.
You introduced me to that. I had never tried one before. And yes, and I appreciate that. I've always learned something new when I visit the tasting room. And that was one that I had never had, and I really enjoyed it.
Yes, it's a really beautiful wine. So that's my favorite.
Okay, great. What is your favorite thing to do in the Conejo Valley when you have any time? Are you able to explore it all?
Love to go hiking. I would say hiking, and I would say visiting other restaurants and supporting other establishments and other small business owners that we know that we've met throughout our time here at West, is being able to go to their restaurant, be able to go to their wine bar, support them. And we'll take a long hike and then go eat at their establishment and have a glass of wine or drink there.
It sounds like a fantastic Saturday.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
And lastly, what is one piece of advice you'd offer to first-time entrepreneurs or small business owners?
I think it's probably just manage your expectations, that everything can go right and everything can go wrong, and you sort of don't know what's coming.
There you go.
Yeah. So I think you just get up every day and you do the work, and you can't control the output. You can only control the input, So it's like, this could go right. This could go wrong. We could have a great 3 months opening a business. We could have a bad 3 months opening a business. So just put the work in, and you can only control the input, and be prepared, to roll with whatever punches come your way.
Well, Amy, this was fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing your story, and congratulations on opening the business of your dreams, it sounds like, and having success, and cannot wait to see how the business continues to evolve. So thank you.
Thank you for having me today. And thank you for being so supportive of our business. I know you came in on your birthday and you're like, yes, I need food and wine. So thank you for all of your support and for helping us promote the business and for letting people know that we're here. And we really appreciate it. That's how we stay open. That's how we keep pouring wine in the glass.
It's my absolute pleasure. That was Amy Bates, co-owner of West Tasting Room in Thousand Oaks. To enter to win a $50 gift card to West Tasting Room, go at West Tasting Room and at Conejo Valley Visionaries on Instagram. Screenshot the episode and share it on your stories, tagging at West Tasting Room and at Conejo Valley Visionaries for a second entry. Good luck. Make sure to subscribe to Conejo Valley Visionaries wherever you listen to podcasts so that you never miss an episode. And follow us at Conejo Valley Visionaries on Instagram to learn more about each guest and enter our weekly giveaways. If you want to share your visionary story on the podcast, send us a DM. We are always open to guest nominations. This episode was produced by Christina Denstead and Justin K. Sloan. Conejo Valley Visionaries is edited by Justin K. Sloan and J. Sloan Productions.